Welcome back to Dano Loves Music, where we talk about the greatest music of yesterday and today. Today we're going to try something new and different. We're going to talk about artist discographies, and I'm going to attempt to rank their discography, basically their albums, their studio albums, from my least favorite to my favorite. And we're going to start with the big kahuna. We're going to start with the Beatles. And I'm going to rank and talk briefly about my favorite and my least favorite albums from that artist. A band that I've been a fan of ever since I was a kid, way back in the 70s. We're going to try and keep this fairly brief. I don't want it to go too long, but if this goes well, I'm going to try and rank other artists. So let's start with the Beatles. The Beatles released, of course, albums, their first album back in 1963, and they released them all the way up through 1970. They only released 12 studio albums while they were together. It doesn't seem like a lot, but when you realize that they were only a recording band for about 7 years, it is amazing that they released that many albums. So, starting with number 12. All of these records, by the way, in my opinion, were at least 4-star albums. Starting with number 12, my least favorite album of the Beatles was their second studio album with the Beatles, which was released in late 1963. And their second album, coming hot off the heels of their first album, they were in the midst of Beatlemania over in England and hadn't quite made it big over here, but my goodness, they were hitting on all cylinders, and they were trying to pump out as many hits as possible. And with that in mind, you know, those first few albums did not have a lot of their big hits on the albums. They were released solely as singles. So this second album of theirs with the Beatles, although it was a great album, 4 stars, it did not have a lot of their big singles at the time, like I Want to Hold Your Hand and She Loves You. Those did not fall on their regular studio albums. Did have a lot of barn burner kind of rockin' tunes, starting off, of course, with It Won't Be Long was a great song. Roll Over Beethoven, a cover song. Their first few albums, their first 2 studio albums, and then another one, which we'll be talking about in a while, did have a handful of cover songs. This one, their cover songs were definitely serviceable and definitely rockin', like Roll Over Beethoven. What's another one? Please Mr. Postman, Till There Was You, Money, of course. They did a great version of the Motown classic Money, but they kind of were focusing on cover songs for the studio albums, but the original songs, some timeless classics like All My Loving, and let's see, All I've Got to Do is a really good one, and Hold Me Tight, It Won't Be Long, were the 2 rockin' original songs that really stand out. George Harrison starts off his songwriting contribution with Don't Bother Me. Fairly decent contribution, but obviously nowhere near what he would in the future give us. So with the Beatles, their second studio album I'd have as my least favorite of their studio albums. Number 11 for me, ranking wise, would be their debut that they released earlier in 1963, Please Please Me, which was released at the beginning of 1963. A lot of covers on that one as well, but some of the highlights off of that album, you can't go wrong with I Saw Her Standing There. You can't go wrong with Twist and Shout, a great cover. You can't go wrong with standards, some of their earliest hit singles, like Please Please Me, Love Me Do, stuff like that. Do You Want to Know a Secret was a big hit. And even their covers, Boys, the first Ringo vocals that you hear on a studio album, we're getting a little bit better. Their debut album earlier in the year, they hit it right off the bat. That it would be a 4.5-star album. With the Beatles is their only 4-star album, in my opinion. They pumped it right up to 4.5-star with their debut. Again, any album that starts off with I Saw Her Standing There and ends with Twist and Shout is going to have a lot. And right smack dab in the middle, you got Please Please Me and Love Me Do, 4 all-time classics. And then peppered in the middle, you've got some really good cover songs, and a few songs that don't quite, not quite as memorable, like Ask Me Why and Anna, Go With Him cover song. It's fine. That would be number 11. Number 10, moving up to number 10. What do we got? A little controversial for me, but their final studio album, not the last album they recorded, of course, which would be Abbey Road. Their final studio album, Let It Be, released in 1970. They were, by this point, falling apart and had already pretty much broken up. Let It Be, a fragmented kind of release produced by Phil Spector. Again, it's a fragment of an album, just over 30 minutes long, and it has, you can tell, they were trying to put together some, bits and pieces of songs that they had. It has songs like Dig a Pig, Dig a Pony, and Maggie May, stuff like that. There were some classics on there. Obviously, they had big hits that to this day we're still worldwide. We're feeling all over the world, like Let It Be, Long and Winding Road, Across the Universe. These are all-time classics. None of these three I would put in my top 10 favorite Beatles songs of all time, but they are meaningful to people all over the world. But as an album, as a studio album of theirs, they had to reach back and piecemeal put together scraps of what they had. One After 909 is a great bluesy riff song that they wrote when they were teenagers. For You Blue, it's a fine George Harrison song. It's nowhere near close to what he gave us on Abbey Road. So that's a number 10 album from the Beatles in my top 12 ranking. It's a 4.5 star. From here, we got one more 4.5 star album, and then we go right up to the 5-star classics. Number 9 is Beatles For Sale, their fourth studio album from late 1964, their second 1964 album, one that came right after they gave us Hard Day's Night. Beatles For Sale, again, they were going full steam every day. I don't know how they were able to sleep, but Beatles For Sale had kind of the same formula as with the Beatles. Had a handful of cover versions on it, littered amongst just some great rockin' originals like No Reply. I'm a Loser is a great song. What You're Doing is a great song, and the cover versions are great. Rock and Roll Music. Oh, one of my favorite Beatles songs of all time is on there, 8 Days a Week. I'm a Loser, Babies in Black, I'll Follow the Sun, one of Paul's greatest ballads. And there are a few clunkers in there that have not stood the test of time. They probably weren't well received at the time. John gave Mr. Moonlight something. I don't know what he was doing there. But Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby is a great George effort, but that was an album closer. But definitely better than the first two albums. They were finding their own. They were improving step by step, but it was definitely the other 1964 album. From there, they would, as far as their studio albums, they would do nothing but reach the heights of the heights. Again, they're pumping out singles at the time, which were not going on the albums, so a lot of those songs were better than nearly everything on these studio albums, the UK albums. You have to remember at the time, the US, they were releasing albums simultaneously with these UK versions, that they were throwing the singles on their albums. It was a mishmash. It was confusing. At some point, maybe I'll make a video to talk about those albums if we have a chance, because they were, I think the first 4 or 5 UK albums, they were coming out with 8 US versions of those albums to kind of Frankenstein them together. But those are the first 4, number 12 through number 9. Now we're up to number 8. Speaking of a Frankenstein album, I consider this an album. Many don't, because originally it was released as a double EP over in the UK. It's Magical Mystery Tour. Again, the second album of the calendar year after Sgt. Pepper, but number 8 is Magical Mystery Tour. Double EP in the UK, but eventually the Canon decided that this would be an official, proper US album, and just judging by some of their all-time classics, we're now in, all time. We're up to 5 stars with this one. Any album that has Magical Mystery Tour, Magical Mystery Tour, Hello Goodbye, I Am the Walrus, Strawberry Fields Forever, Penny Lane, All You Need Is Love, I Am the Walrus. Did I say I Am the Walrus? I Am the Walrus is gonna automatically make it for an incredible listen. More of a song-based, less cohesive kind of release, obviously, since it was basically the EP songs from the movie and then padded with the singles from that year to make it an album. But what an album, since it's now seen almost 50 years later as an album, I have to rank it somewhere. I'm gonna rank it at number 8, not quite, it is a 5-star album, not quite as high as the top 7, which are 7 of the greatest albums, not only of the 60s, but of all time. Our top 7, number 7 is, for me, the one and only A Hard Day's Night, their soundtrack album, their 3rd album that they released. This is when they were really just start coming into their own. They were going a mile a minute. They were now into the late spring of 1964. That movie, if you have never seen that movie, you need to check it out. It is a monumental introduction. If you need an introduction to early Beatlemania, that's a great docudrama to watch, and it gives us those great early Beatles songs post Ed Sullivan's Show, whirlwind Beatlemania stuff. We've got, you start off with that chord, Hard Day's Night, brings us right into I Should Have Known Better, brings us right into that incredible Paul ballad, If I Fell. And then we go into the George song, I'm Happy Just to Dance With You. Those first 4 songs, and you think we're done there? No, we're not done there. We go back to a Paul classic, And I Love Her, and then Tell Me Why, the harmonies on that song. And you think we're done? No, we're not done. We got Can't Buy Me Love, a number 1 song for them. That's an all-time, just an all-time pop rock, power pop classic. And those are the songs that we see in the movie. And then there's even more. The songs which in the original vinyl version would compromise, side 2. We're still talking, legendary stuff like I'll Cry Instead, I Got a Chip on My Shoulder That's Bigger Than My Feet, we got Things We Said Today, When I Get Home, You Can't Do That, and I'll Be Back. The sequencing of the album, would it have been better to intersperse the non-movie songs a little better in with the movie songs? I don't know. It kind of, it comes from a perspective of how you want it to work that way, but 34 minutes of just, this may be in my mind, one of those earliest proto power pop standards that you just can't go wrong. This album is so much better than the first 2 albums that it's you can just roll down your car window and crank it. Okay, now we're in the top half, the top 6, but we're definitely in 5-star territory. All 7 of these albums comfortably fit in my top 100 albums of all time. Number 6, we're up to Sgt. Pepper. Many people's favorite album, not only favorite Beatle album of all time, but favorite album of all time. And I could see why. The first, for many people, the first, rock opera, the first, the first thematic kind of structured psychedelic album. There were many before, but for many, this is the one that knocked people on their socks. That June day in the summer of love, 1967, that opened many people's eyes to the potential of what popular music could be. And I can, see why. Books have been written about it. Courses have been taught about it. YouTube hour-long videos, I'm sure have talked about Sgt. Pepper and the power of it as a work of art. From the opening, crowd noises of Sgt. Pepper straight into Ringo, and this band, the Sgt. Pepper band, with a little help from my friends, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, all the way through, Getting Better, She's Leaving Home, Fixing a Hole. You all, if you're watching this video, you likely know all the songs. Many of you could probably, list off the songs in order, all the way up to one of the most powerful, legendary songs of all time, A Day in the Life. I read the news today, oh boy, to finish it off in a way that, I'm sure blew people's minds back in 1967. For me, it's number 6. These top 6 are very, very close to each other. I'd say this has probably always been number 6 ever since I was a teenager when I first heard these albums back in the late 70s. But number 5, we're into the top 5. Now this number 5 album would probably be below the top 5 for many people, but I'm a fan of 3-minute pop, 2.5-minute pop songs, just concise, chorus verse chorus. And for me, the Help soundtrack, in my mind, is better than the Sgt. Pepper album, just by that very nature. I know it's got some cover songs on it, but the other songs on it just are some of my favorite Beatles songs of all time. It's the Help soundtrack. It starts off with Help. It goes to The Night Before. It's the harmonies. Those John and Paul have the harmonies on The Night Before. You've got to hide your love. You've got to hide your love away. I Need You is probably my third favorite George song. Yes, even more so than Something. Another Girl, You've Got to Hide Your Love Away. Like the first side of Hard Day's Night, those soundtrack songs, I don't know what they were doing, but they just picked them perfectly, and they have perfect visuals for those movies, and they stand as music videos today, right? And then after Another Girl, you're gonna lose that girl, and then you go into one of my 5 favorite Beatles songs, the monumental Ticket to Ride. One of the first 3-minute plus pop songs that just has that power, right? That yearning, that guitar, that awesome guitar sound. Then we go to side 2, like we did with A Hard Day's Night, and you got the Ringo song. It's a Buck Owens cover, but it fits Ringo so well, Act Naturally, right? And then it's back to more of just this stuff that you can just melt into, right? You've got It's Only Love, You Like Me Too Much. And then not quite up to the zenith of this first side. You've got Tell Me What You See. Maybe the first dip in the album, but probably my only dip in the album, because you go right back to I've Just Seen a Face, right? That kind of country rock vibe that Paul would give us with his solo stuff and Ram, stuff like that. And then, of course, one of the most covered songs of all time, Yesterday. You've got an album with Help on it, Ticket to Ride, and Yesterday on it. You can't go wrong. And it does finish off with a cover, but it's Dizzy Miss Lizzy, for crying out loud, and a great way to finish the album, Help. That's number 5. We got 4 to go. And if you've been watching, thank you for sticking with us for so long. For this whole video, we got our top 4. And number 4, Rubber Soul. Rubber Soul. Many people, again, these top 5, these top 6, many of them are going to be number 1 for you. Rubber Soul is a hair below the other 3. Rubber Soul, for a short period of time, was my favorite Beatle album, but after listening to all these albums, probably 100 times, it falls just a little bit, because you line them up against the other albums, song by song, track by track, and it's like, okay, where are we going? Starts off with Drive My Car, right into Norwegian Wood. Of course, again, if you've heard all these albums many, many times, your brain is motored to, as the song ends, you know exactly what's coming next. Norwegian Wood, You Won't See Me, Nowhere Man, Think for Yourself. Those first 5 songs, Think for Yourself again. Now, it used to be one of my favorite Beatles songs. I think I used a lyric from that song in my yearbook. The future still looks good, and you've got time to rectify the things that you should. That's how important that song was to me back when I was a teenager. The Word is a little bit of a dip for me. I know people love The Word, and it's just never resonated with me in that way. But then we're back right over to Michelle, one of the great love songs, using French and English in a way that back in the 60s, again, we're in 1965 now, the second release of 1965. They had that 2 albums every year back in the 60s, back in the early part of their career. Michelle, beautiful, beautiful love song. Then we go over to Ringo, doing the Ringo thing with What Goes On. Then back over to Girl, John's love song, right? And then Looking Through You, In My Life. You thought Michelle was a love song that would stand the test of time. In My Life, come on. Then we go Wait, and then If I Needed Someone is probably my 4th favorite George Harrison song. Do we have a George Harrison Beatle ranking video coming up somewhere down the road? Maybe. And then of course we end with The Unfortunate Run for Your Life, which has not stood the test of time. Musically, it's a great song. Lyrically, not so much, but that's how we end Rubber Soul. And I think the fact that it has the word and Run for Your Life on it just brings it down to number 4, because we've got our top 3. If you've been following so far, you know what the 3 albums are. And number 3 is Abbey Road. Abbey Road, what a powerful way to end their recording career. Of course, they recorded the songs on Let It Be first, and then they went back in and said, we're going to do Abbey Road, which also had, they were doing the recording songs at the same time, but the fact that they were able to pull these songs together and make this was their cohesive statement, right? Having, George's 2 most famous Beatles songs, or his 2 most famous songs in Here Comes the Sun and Something on this album, along with, Come Together, one of the Beatles' most famous rockers, and of course, does anything need to be said about the side 2 suite, the Abbey Road medley? I called it the side 2 suite. It's known as the Abbey Road medley, and you can play that album, that side 2, from beginning to end, and how much it influenced all sorts of rock and roll in the 70s going forward, and gave us the idea of an album, what an album could be, right? Just a few years after albums became this way of introducing art to the popular music zeitgeist, right? Abbey Road is one of those landmark things, right? But we've got, again, Come Together, Something, I Want You, She's So Heavy. Talk about a heavy, that was probably John's version of Helter Skelter, right? I Want You, She's So Heavy. And just the little tricks, the way that I Want You, She's So Heavy just goes into this dirge like power thing, and then it just ends, right? The first time you hear that, and everything, just the solos at the end, the drumming solo at the end of the end, all these, and then Her Majesty ending the album with a 23-second love song to the Queen. It's just a fun album. It's a powerful album. It's got a kid's song on it. Octopus's Garden might not be everybody's favorite, but it's such a Ringo song, right? So Abbey Road. 2 more to go. Number 2, probably the album that's been my favorite album of all time for the most amount of time in my life. It's no longer my favorite album of all time, because my number 2 Beatle album. And it is the White Album. It is a way, in my mind, these 30 songs, what a way to introduce anybody to the idea of an album, a rock and roll album, a pop music album, everything you would want, like in an encyclopedia of what you'd look for, especially in the late 60s. This is obviously before many, many other types of genres of music were introduced, but the fact that they were able to pull this together and go record this outside of their own comfort zone and put it together, it was a miracle, right? Again, I could talk for half an hour about these songs, these 30 songs that just changed my life basically when I was a teenager and heard them for the first time. I had to go out and I had to buy the white vinyl version of this. I had to buy the mobile high fidelity version of this. And when the CD version of this came out, it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. But again, the White Album was so important that nowadays, soon after that, whenever an artist would release a double album or an album like this with varied song genres in an album, it would be, oh, is this person's White Album? Is this Liz Phair's White Album? Is this Sloane's White Album? Is this the Rolling Stones' White Album? It's like, it's part of the vernacular today, the White Album. It's the official title, of course, it's not called the White Album, it's the Beatles, right? But the double album has everything. Back in the USSR, it has the rockers. Back in the USSR, Birthday, Helter Skelter, Your Blues. It has the pop stuff. It has Obla Di, Obla Da. It has, do I have to go through every single song, right? It has the experimental Revolution 9, which is 8 minutes of just this odd noise collage, noise art, right? Found stuff, right? And then it ends with Ringo just saying good night. It's 83 minutes. That doesn't quite fit on one, back in the day, didn't quite fit on one CD. It has statements all over the map, and they were able to sequence it in a way that made sense. It has great guitar licks while my guitar gently weeps. It has humor, it has satire, it has everything. If you listen to it once, it'll profoundly change the way you look at the Beatles, and you'll listen to it over and over again, even non-Beatle fans. But number one, my favorite Beatle album of all time, and is it currently my favorite album of all time? Mayhaps, I don't know. It is, of course, Revolver. Revolver, the perfect album in my estimation, because beginning to end, it tells me, it says to me everything that I want to know. It tells me everything that I need to know about what the Beatles are to me in a way that these other albums don't quite do, right? It fills in all the gaps that Rubber Soul never did, right? Starting with text, starting with a George song, which is unusual, right? And going into, the beauty of Eleanor Rigby, the snarkiness of I'm Only Sleeping, right? And then back to Love You Too, giving us the sitar, right, for the first time. And then the absolutely pure love, a melody of here, there, and everywhere. I want her everywhere, right? And then straight into, is this the most popular children's pop song of all time, Yellow Submarine? I don't know, but any kid that I've ever taught in my school, the school I teach at, they all know Yellow Submarine, right? And then she said one of the first grade drug songs, right? Good Day Sunshine. The simple topic of sunshine. And not probably, my favorite Beatles song is And Your Bird Can Sing. 2 minutes of bliss, Rickenbacker bliss, and you go from there, right? For No One, very sad story about domestic loss of just a couple moving on, right? Dr. Robert, John's having problems right there, right? And I want to tell you another George song. George really kind of, this is his album where he's making his mark as the third main songwriter of the Beatles. Got to give you into my life with those horns, my goodness. But is this the end? No, we have to end on the great, the magnificent Tomorrow Never Knows. When Don Draper in Mad Men put the Revolver album on the turntable and Tomorrow Never Knows, for some reason he put the needle down on Tomorrow Never Knows instead of Taxman, okay? And that was the symbolism on Mad Men of the 60s, right? For the square, conservative Don Don Draper, Tomorrow Never Knows. That was the true shifting of the generation. It wasn't Sgt. Pepper. It was the summer of 1966, and Revolver blowing us all away. All of us turning off your minds and floating downstream. You know, I was 3 years old, but it was waiting for me. I knew it was waiting for me. And, you know, the whole Rubber Soul Revolver debate, I just look at the tracks, right? It's like you compare Tomorrow Never Knows to Run for Your Life. Most of the other tracks you can compare one against the other, and it's just Revolver's track for track a better album than Rubber Soul. Well, there you have it. I've been going on for 30 plus minutes. Hopefully you've enjoyed me yapping about my favorite band of all time, my favorite artist of all time, and hopefully I was cohesive enough to keep your attention. And I'd like to do more of these kind of artist lists, rankings of albums. And I know that a lot of their greatest songs obviously did not end up on studio albums. They had more than 200 tracks. They weren't able to fit them on, but it's amazing that they were able to, obviously they're the greatest. I'd love to hear in the comments, if you agree with me, if you think I'm full of crap, what your favorites are, what your least favorites are, what I should do in the future, if I shouldn't do any more of these in the future. But if I'd love it if you liked, subscribed, told a friend or two about what I'm doing here, and we can keep going and on this sort of thing as I continue to polish up my look and as I go forward here on Dana Loves Music. Until then, hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see you real soon with our next artist ranking countdown. Thank you, and keep rocking.